The sun was only beginning to rise, spilling golden light over the gently rolling waves of the great sea. The sky glowed with soft orange, while birds chirped above the tall palm trees that lined the shore. The air carried the smell of salt and wet sand. In the village of Umuoga, the day had begun like any other. Children fetched water, women prepared cassava by the fires, and the men sharpened their fishing spears. But just beyond the horizon, something stirred the morning peace. It was the fishermen who saw it first. 3 canoes had ventured out before dawn, paddling to deeper waters to cast their nets. They were experienced men, used to the ways of the sea, to its moods and its tricks. So when Abiz, the youngest of them, shouted and pointed toward a strange object far off in the distance, the others squinted their eyes, trying to make sense of it. A dark shape sat low on the water, too large and steady to be driftwood. It moved with purpose, slicing through the waves slowly. As the sun rose higher, it revealed more. Long, wooden arms, no wings, rose high into the sky like giant sticks catching the wind. A beast with wings made of cloth. Abiz's hands trembled. "It's not a boat," he whispered. "It's something else." They paddled back fast, abandoning their catch, shouting as they neared the shore. By the time they landed, breathless and wide-eyed, their voices had already stirred the village. Within minutes, the entire village gathered at the shoreline. Men with spears stood in front, shielding the women and children who peeked from behind thatched huts and tree trunks. Even Nadi the Wise, the oldest and most respected elder in the land, emerged with slow, careful steps, leaning on his carved staff. They all stared at the sea. And there it was. The strange ship, larger than any canoe they had ever known, edged closer and closer to the shore. Its white sails billowed like clouds, and carved symbols lined its sides, words and markings no one could understand. Some of the villagers murmured prayers. Others grabbed charms and amulets, fearful this was a spirit's arrival. "Is it the work of a Madioha?" someone whispered. "Or a curse from beyond the sea?" "It is not a boat," said Okari, the village warrior and Nadi's strong-willed nephew. "It is a house that floats. Perhaps the gods are sending judgment." A loud splash silenced them all. The ship had dropped anchor. A smaller wooden vessel was being lowered from the side, and within it sat one man, tall, dressed in shiny garments that reflected the sun, and with skin pale like clay, like nothing they had ever seen. He rode alone. The people gasped. "He is white," a woman cried. "A white man." "An Onyeocha," someone whispered. "He has no color in his skin." Panic began to spread. Children screamed and ran. Mothers pulled them into huts. Some men dropped their weapons and ran toward the forest. Many believed they had just seen a ghost, or some water spirit who had taken human form to bring doom. Still, a few remained. As the pale stranger touched the shore and stood up, he towered over most of them. His hair was light brown, almost golden. His beard was trimmed, his blue eyes wide with nervousness, but also wonder. He said something, words none of them understood, though his voice was calm. They backed away, their spears raised. He raised both hands into the air, slowly, showing that he was not armed. Then, slowly, carefully, he reached into a bag at his side and pulled out something small, a round object that shimmered in the sun. He took a step forward and gently placed it on the ground. No one moved. Then Nadi, thin and bent with age, stepped forward. His voice cut through the murmurs like a knife. "Wait." Everyone fell silent. The old man walked, step by slow step, until he stood just 10 feet from the stranger. He studied the man's face, his eyes. He could feel no evil.
No curse.
Only confusion, fear, and a strange curiosity that mirrored his own. "He is no spirit," Nadi said at last. "He breathes like us. He bleeds like us. And he is lost." Okari protested. "He could be dangerous. Or he could be the beginning of something greater," Nadi replied. "The gods do not send signs without reason." He bent down and picked up the small object the stranger had left, a round glass mirror. When he looked into it and saw his own reflection, he gasped. Then he laughed softly. "A man who gives a mirror before a word," he muttered. "Perhaps he speaks in symbols." The villagers began to emerge from hiding. step by step, hesitant, but no longer afraid. The children peeked again. The warriors lowered their spears. The white man smiled and bowed slightly. Nadi smiled back. And thus, in that moment, under the rising sun and the roar of the waves, the first meeting between the people of Umuoga and a man from across the sea began, not with violence, but with a gift, a bow, and the fragile hope of understanding. The white man was given a small hut near the edge of Umuoga, close enough to the village center to be watched, but far enough that he would not cause unrest. Though his presence no longer sparked immediate terror, it stirred something deeper, a fear that had not yet found its name. He called himself Willem, and he was clearly trying to be friendly. He bowed when spoken to, offered odd but fascinating gifts, shiny beads, metal cups, colored fabrics, and most strange of all, a box that opened to reveal a silver circle that told time. These things bewildered the people. They had never seen such objects, and to many, it confirmed what they believed: he must be a spirit, or a messenger from a distant world. Despite the calm, tension lingered in the air like thick smoke. Each day, groups gathered near his hut, some to see what strange thing he would do next, others to make sure he didn't try to harm anyone. He spoke in a language no one understood, harsh-sounding, full of rs and throaty sounds, but over time, he began pointing to objects, repeating words, trying to learn the local tongue. He would touch his chest and say, "Willem," then point to others. Slowly, he learned. "Azu," he would say, pointing to a fish. "Neen," for mother. And every time he learned a new word, he smiled brightly, as if he had uncovered treasure. The children were the first to be drawn to him. While adults watched from a distance, suspicious and alert, the children snuck near his hut and giggled when he tried to speak. Some tossed fruit at him and ran. Others stayed longer, playing with the odd toys he carried. A tiny wooden horse that rolled when pushed. A flute with a sound different from the village's own. Willem never raised his voice. He never fought back. His calmness slowly chipped away at their fear. One day, during the village's evening gathering around the fire, Nadi the Wise stood and spoke. "He is learning our ways," the old man said, his wrinkled hand clutching his staff. "He eats our food. He helps clean the river path. He is not a threat." But Okari, the village's warrior and Nadi's nephew, was not convinced. He stood, broad-chested and firm, his spear in hand. Today he is quiet. Tomorrow, others may come like him, armed, with fire and thunder. What then? This one may smile, but who knows what waits beyond the sea? We must not be fooled. A murmur of agreement echoed among the elders. The older warriors nodded. Fear of the unknown was still strong. But a few younger men and women had begun to see Willem differently. Adiz, a curious young healer's apprentice, often watched him from a distance, studying how he treated small wounds with dried powders and wrapped bandages unlike anything she had seen. She wondered what knowledge he carried. What plants grew in his land? What secrets of the body had he learned? So, the village split, not by war, but by thought. Some saw him as a danger to their peace, while others saw him as a path to something new. The turning point came during the festival of Onwa Ifugioku, the moon of harvest. It was a celebration of abundance, when yams were honored, and the spirits of the land were praised. Music filled the air, drums echoed into the night, and everyone wore their finest garments of woven cloth and feathers. Willem watched from a distance, sitting outside his hut. He had been told not to interfere, but his eyes glimmered with longing. The music stirred something in him. He missed his home, Holland, he had called it, its cold air, its stone buildings, its own music. But there was beauty here, too. So, against Nadi's warning, Willem stood up and approached the firelight, stopping just at the edge of the crowd. The drumming stopped. All eyes turned. Okari stepped forward, hand on his weapon. "He does not belong here," he said sharply. Willem bowed low, then pulled out a strange object, a small, carved box with silver strings across it. He sat on a log, placed the box on his knee, and began to strum. Soft, unfamiliar music filled the air, gentle and haunting. The sound was unlike the bold rhythms of Umuoga's drums, yet it held its own spirit. For a long while, no one moved. Even the children were silent. It was a sound from across the sea, a melody of memory and loneliness. When he finished, he looked up nervously. And then, to everyone's surprise, Nadi began to clap, slow, rhythmic claps that echoed through the quiet. One by one, others joined. Even some elders nodded in approval. Perhaps he has his own gods, Nadi said softly. Perhaps their voices speak through music too. That night, Willem was allowed to sit by the fire. From then on, a small group began spending time with him, Adiz among them, asking questions, showing him things, asking what he knew in return. He drew maps in the dirt, showed pictures in books, pointed to stars and named them in his tongue. And yet, fear did not vanish. Okri's voice remained strong. This is how it begins, he warned. First one. Then many. Today they bring music. Tomorrow, chains. But the people no longer listened with the same certainty. Umuoga was changing. The Pale Man had opened a door, not just to new knowledge, but to conflict, to wonder, to a future no one yet understood. And the sea, silent and vast, held more secrets still. The months that followed the harvest festival became a strange mixture of peace and unease in Umuoga. Willem was no longer a mystery. He had become a man with a name, a face people recognized, and a daily routine they had come to accept. He helped the fishermen mend their nets, traded simple tools for yams and smoked meat, and sat with the village children under the Iroko tree, teaching them songs in his strange tongue. The white man, once feared as a ghost, now lived among them like any visitor, respected by some, tolerated by others, and silently watched by all. But change, once it begins, spreads like wildfire through dry grass. One morning, Willem brought something unusual from the shipwrecked remains of his boat. He had returned to the shore with a handful of seeds, different from any the villagers had seen. Small, smooth, and oval. With Nadi's blessing and Adiz's help, he planted them beside the river and taught the people how to care for them. Weeks passed, and the plants grew, tall, green stalks bearing yellow fruits like no yam or cassava before them. The villagers tasted them cautiously. They were sweet and strange. Children loved them. Farmers began asking for more. Corn, Willem called it. Maize. It was the first time the people of Umuoga realized that the stranger did not just come with trinkets, he brought knowledge. New foods, new tools, even new ways to build things. His small metal hammer mended a broken canoe faster than 10 men with stone tools. But with each new lesson came a deeper question. How much of him should they allow into their world? At the village council, the elders debated. We have gained much, said Adiz, who now spent most of her days learning from Willem. Medicine, plants, even healing for wounds we could not treat before. He means well, said Nadi, his voice tired but firm. The gods do not always send us what we expect. Sometimes, they send us what we need. But Okri, ever watchful, stood and pointed his spear into the earth. And when more of them come, he said, voice rising. What then? Will we feed them? Build huts for them? What if they do not come with flutes and seeds, but with thunder and chains? The council fell silent, because even those who supported Willem had heard stories, rumors from passing travelers, traders who spoke of strange ships that landed in other parts of the coast, of white-skinned men who brought gifts but later returned with soldiers, villages that had vanished, people who were never seen again. Willem could not understand these meetings in full. He only saw the shifting eyes, the way people treated him, some with warmth, others now with distance. One night, the sky turned dark with clouds. Thunder rolled in from the sea. The wind howled through the village like a mourning spirit. By morning, half of Umuoga was underwater. Roofs collapsed. Yams rotted in the ground. Goats drowned in their pens. The river swelled with anger. The people were devastated. And in their pain, they looked for someone to blame. It was him, someone shouted. Before he came, this never happened. He brought this curse from the sea. Even those who once smiled at Willem now turned their backs. Mothers pulled their children away. Men refused his help. He stood outside his hut, drenched from the rain, holding out his hands, but no one reached back. A group of warriors gathered before the shrine of Amadioha, pleading for signs. They killed a goat, spilled its blood on the earth, and the priestess spoke. The gods are silent. But the earth remembers. And it does not welcome the stranger. That night, a mob formed, torches in hand. They marched to Willem's hut. But before they could act, Nardi appeared, leaning heavily on his staff, breath short, but eyes sharp. He stood between Willem and the crowd. I will not allow this, he said. Not while I still live. You are old, Okari growled. You no longer see what we see. No, Nardi replied. I see clearer than all of you. He turned to the villagers. When he first came, you feared him. I told you to watch. You watched, and you saw peace. You saw growth. You saw change. And now, because the rain falls hard, you blame him again? Do you blame the sun when your skin burns? Or the moon when your lover dies? The villagers murmured, uncertain. He is not our enemy, Nardi continued. He is a window. If you close it now, you may never know what lies beyond it. Then, with difficulty, the old man reached for Willem's hand and lifted it high. This is no curse. This is a man. Treat him as you would any man, with judgment, yes, but also with fairness. No one spoke for a long time. The mob, still holding their torches, began to back away. Slowly, the crowd dispersed, leaving Nardi and Willem alone in the firelight. That night, Nardi fell ill. Within 3 days, he died, his final breath spent asking Adise to continue learning from Willem, and to never let fear rule her heart. The old world began to shift after his passing. Slowly, carefully, the people welcomed Willem back into the fold. But things were never quite the same. There was warmth, yes, but also caution, like a snake sunning itself on a rock, never fully asleep. And then, one morning, a small boy ran into the village square, breathless. Another boat, he cried. From the sea. More white men. The villagers rushed to the shore, hearts pounding. Willem stood beside them, his face pale, not with joy, but with dread. Because even he did not know who had come next. And so began a new chapter in the story of Umuoga, not just of one white man and one village, but of a continent on the edge of transformation, for better or for worse.